Mr. Green, picking back up on venture capital and the SBR process, obviously a lot of discussion there. My question is, are there other ways to structure venture capital investment contracts as to not include ownership and, like a greater share of profits or a sliding scale of ownership that corresponds to success?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Actually, the way the venture capital industry has developed over the last 40 to 50 years has been we raise our money from university endowments and private foundations under charter documents that require us to take an equity interest in those enterprises. That's the way the model, that's the way the industry has developed. So, for example, even a slight change like taking an interest in a limited partnership agreement as opposed to a regular C corporation is something that we can't do in general, because we are constricted to taking that equity interest, enjoying hopefully that appreciation as the enterprise grows and the like. So it would take a whole sea change in the entire VC industry in order to do it in some other manner.
Did you see any movements in that direction at all?
I have not.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stalker, in your testimony you mentioned that we should focus on ensuring that large corporations should not directly benefit from a small business program. I certainly agree with that. How would you suggest that we ensure that?
In terms of the rules that have been discussed in the past and some subsequent discussion that we've had with the committee staff in regard to how you would go forward, we think there should be a percentage limitation on ownership of any SBIR company by a large corporation, and we think that that's workable going forward.
Many of the recommendations that you advocated were included in last year's reauthorization bill. What would you like to not see in this year's bill?
Well, I'm not sure that the allocation increase that we're advocating was included in last year's bill for a lot of different reasons. We'd like to see that issue addressed at least by the time the bill comes out of conference. I think secondly, we don't think there should be a complete elimination of Phase 1s. Phase 1 is a very useful exercise in testing whether concepts can be made to work. This notion of having privately financed Phase 1s then being asked to enter into Phase 2 competition, I think that's an issue that we can look at, but I don't want to see us abandon Phase 1. Phase 1 is the incidence of failure is very high in Phase 1, but that's a useful result because it tells you shouldn't be wasting your time in that particular approach. So we think in that context the Phase 1s need to be to be kept in the program. We'd like to see more policy direction in regard to the commercialization exercise. I think the agencies need to be reporting back to this committee on a more frequent basis in regard to how successful the transition efforts are. I'd like to see the SBA's data, for example, that 50% of Phase 2s do become commercialized. That was a little surprising to me. I would like to see the Defense Department, as good as we've seen progress made within DOD, and for this I would single out the Navy. The Navy does a fantastic job in looking at technology transition from an early stage. The other services probably need to do some work in catching up to where the Navy is currently. So in that context, I think that would be important for the committee to include in any bill as a policy directive in regard to this whole technology transition effort. We'd also like to see an appropriation dedicated to covering management costs. You heard the representatives of the first panel address that. I've actually been in meetings with people saying they didn't want to review SBIR proposals because they didn't have time to do it. And people saw it as a burden on their already busy day of having to undertake a evaluation of SBIR proposals. So I think if there's additional management resources provided to the agencies, I think that would help them do a better job of being able to articulate topics that make sense to the acquisition people, to be able to do the proper evaluation of the proposals and to manage the program as it goes through execution.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you.